are some anime out there that fit into this weird little niche of anime that have multiple seasons, but a lot of people question who or exactly are watching these anime to actually keep them alive. Some of the anime in this list include Natsumi Book of Friends, Golden Kamuy, Kingdom, and Red to Girlfriend. Now, not every anime that has this many seasons are necessarily bad, except for Red to Girlfriend. A lot of these anime, I feel, just find their audience, and most of their audience aren't going to be very vocal about the quality, except for Rent a Girlfriend. Willing to go ahead and actually just sit down and enjoy the anime for what it is, and to just embrace every time they get a new season, except for Rent a Girlfriend. And one of those particular anime that fall into that weird niche of anime that gets a lot of seasons, but no one understands why because they ask constantly who the hell is watching this, is Shield Hero. And this got brought into my attention because Shield Hero recently just announced its 5th season. And I saw many mutuals of mine, along with others in the anime community, asking the question, who is keeping this anime alive? Why is this getting so many seasons, and who are the crazy people who are actually following this? Hi, my name's Mise Kurosaki. I'm a Shield Hero fan, and welcome to my TED Talk. For you see, yeah, I am somebody that actually has sat down and watched every single episode and every single season of Shield Hero, which is weird to think about because I'm nowhere near as consistent with other shows, but for some reason, Shield Hero is the one I am. But honestly, this is all perfect timing because I've just finished watching season 4 and I wanted to go ahead and share my thoughts on it because I have many thoughts about how season 4 turned out. Not gonna lie, they're not great, but this does in fact give me the perfect opportunity to go ahead and actually talk about my whole experience with Shield Hero. One, because it's gonna give a lot of context to how I feel about season 4, talking about the past 3 seasons, and 2, I feel like a lot of people may not really know anybody that actually watches or reviews Shield Hero, so it's probably good to actually go ahead and talk about every single season if you haven't really come upon an actual review. So let us go ahead and dive into Shield Hero and talk about all 4 seasons. Now, to be fair, I'm not going to spend too much time on seasons 1 through 3. I just want to give my general takes on the entire show before I actually really deep dive into the most recent season, but I'll try to at least make it cohesive but actually palpable for everybody watching. Everyone knows about the first season of Shield Hero because it is the season that really put Shield Hero on the map with its really intense and dark story and its different take on the actual isekai genre. Now, I don't know if Shield Hero is the first of its ilk to do it or the first one to just popularize it, but it is a big component of starting a lot of shows and other fantasy elements that I've seen of the MC getting a support ability only to become one of the strongest people in their verse. Which is also kind of problematic, because that means it probably had an element in creating Redo of Healer. That's a wonderful thought to have, isn't it? But there is a big reason why Shield Hero was so talked about when in its first season. It had a dark and greedier take that other isekai had, the support character thing was really big, and it had just other good elements like the MC not being overpowered at the start and actually having to struggle a bit for their powers. On top of all that, the world building of Shield Hero is actually pretty fantastic when you look at how everybody interacts and how much they did in such a little time is actually quite impressive. There's a reason why season 1 in Shield Hero is regarded really highly. Now, we'll admit the second part of the first season wasn't as great as the first part, but it did go ahead and set up many of things to be built upon itself in future seasons, which, at least for season 2 and season 3, they do in a really phenomenal way. There's a reason why a lot of people at the time were really propping up this isekai, because in the beginning when everything was starting to get saturated, Shield Hero was one of the only isekai to actually really differ at the time. Even now, when you look at the landscape of how abysmal the isekai genre is, Shield Hero, despite not having the same popularity, still stands out pretty highly, at least across most of its seasons. And season 1 is a prime example of that reason, and is a good reason why I would still recommend this show. If anything, season 1 in itself is very good. I still advocate for everything else like we'll talk about, but there still isn't really like a season like season 1. Now, season 2, I can admit, was a bit of a drop, and it felt like a weird pivot from everything that we built up in the first season. It took a little bit for it to actually get its legs, but by the time you actually finish it, season 2 probably built some of the biggest pieces and implications that this show was going to explore. Season 2 does pull back a lot from the actual grittiness that Season 1 had, but in exchange, we got probably the best world building of that series, where it made implications of other Cardinal heroes, other Cardinal universes, people being pulled into other universes, and how that may be affecting something way bigger than them is insane. And to be fair, I'm not gonna fault anybody for falling off in the first couple of episodes. Like I said, they're not great, but Shield Hero Season 2 does reward you for sticking around. It is a slow burn of a show because it needs to set everything up in order to properly explain to you why this season is as important as the first. Not to mention, the villain for Season 2 actually has a pretty good motivation. Being a Cardinal hero himself from a previous party, he's trying to really take advantage of the whole multiversal thing and trying to just kind of break it apart, which for his motivations for it does make sense, and it's something that, while he should still be stopped, is actually quite understandable. To call Season 2 a complete drop-off, I feel like is unfair. It dropped off in certain elements, but it definitely raised the stakes in others. It was playing a game of a balancing scale, and the trade-off, I think, was very equivalent. And at the end of the day, I still had fun with exactly what it provided me because it was just that good. Now, when it comes to Season 3, I actually might have a bit of a controversial take here, as there are a lot of people that did not like the season. I feel like at this point there was a lot more people who fell off from Season 3 than Season 2. Where Season 3 is cleaning up the mess of the Cardinal heroes and them just messing up everything and all of them kind of spiraling in one way or another. Now, to be fair, that's not completely their fault, as you learn later in the season, but they do make a mess nonetheless, and of course, Naofumi has to clean it up. Now, despite having an actual fighting tournament happening in Season 3, there is a lot more chatty and political stuff happening, but for me personally, I really like that. And Season 3, I think, starts with a banger of an episode and actually just is good through the entire thing. I like the fact that we actually have some continuity of seeing that, hey, the Cardinal heroes weren't just dilly-dallying in a corner doing nothing like NPCs, they actually were taking action while Naofumi was doing the actual work. And now Naofumi has to go and clean it up, and we see kind of all of them spiral in a way that's really bad in some cases and really funny in others. As well as Season 3 having some of the best animated and choreographed scenes in the entire series. I don't know what they were cooking up in Season 3, but I remember the particular clip of Philo, Raphtalia, and Naofumi all using their abilities at the same time, and people went off sharing that clip everywhere. This season was also good in giving Raphtalia a lot of lore and giving a lot of beastskin details that was very long overdue, with also adding a shit ton of people to Naofumi's party that by the end of the entirety of Season 3, Naofumi is just stacked upon stacked with people for his own party. The only thing I wish Season 3 actually did was go into the lore and keep the plate spinning when it came to the actual Cardinal stuff and the whole multiversal thing, which they do in some aspects with one of the new members who is a weird little bit glitchy, and the king who drops other things like the 7-star heroes or whatever the fuck they were called. But it is one of those things where Season 1 and Season 2 definitely had more of the Cardinal hero lore than Season 3, which was one of those trade-offs that I kind of wish didn't happen, but I was still happy with Season 3, given all the information and all the development that we got nonetheless. So now going through everything between Season 1 and Season 3, you can see that I was a big fan of Shield Hero. I might have not been as super strong as I would for other anime, but I could definitely acknowledge that Shield Hero was still a pretty unique isekai compared to everything that was coming out. And at the time, it was one of my top 5 isekais out there. So going into Season 4, I was actually genuinely excited, especially since we were going to explore more beastskin stuff, which I always like. It seems to be one of the strongest parts of the show, and it seems like we were really going to get into politics, which, if you know me, any show that does the whole politic game, I love. If your anime has a politic arc, it's so good, and it's so great, and I'm such a sucker for that type of thing. But now, I have actually watched Season 4 of Shield Hero, and oh my god, it is actually quite a massive downgrade. Now, I want to be clear when I say this, I don't think Season 4 is a bad piece of anime, but compared from Season 1 to Season 3, that I would call good, unique content, and content that actually stands out on the wider genre of isekai, Season 4 definitely falls more into the generic side of things, and in probably some of the worst ways possible. I also understand what they were trying to do with this arc, or 2 separate arcs, where they were actually trying to give a lot of development for things that are to come in Season 5. Trying to make characters like Full, Outlaw, and Raphtalia a bit stronger and give them a lot more lore, as a lot of this season, or all of this season, is mostly focused around those 3 characters. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with character development as long as it's done right. And it's not even done egregiously here, it's just, I feel like Season 4 rushed a lot of things. Shield Hero has 2 methods when it comes to telling its stories. You either have the 24 episode format where it tells an arc between 12 episodes of each of its kind, or 1 season full of 12 episodes where it's really surrounded around 1 arc. The similarity between both of those formats is that an arc is told in all 12 episodes, whether it's the 24 episode format where you can tell 2 arcs within a season as it spans 12 episodes, or in 1 season where it's just a 12 episode season. Season 4 of Shield Hero does not do that format and implements the new one, where it tries to tell 2 arcs between 6 episodes, and it can't do that. Now, you probably could have gotten away with it if this was how you initially introduced things. And at that point, I don't think many people would be interested, as that format, as shown in this season, shows that the storytelling for that isn't as strong, as it feels like it leaves a lot of information wanting to be had. But now, doing that in Season 4, when you have 3 seasons full of information and details of little things like the Cardinal Heroes and the Multiverse things and the 7 Starlight Heroes and everything else in between that's been levied to us, like the Phoenix and the Tortoise and other beasts that are coming, 6 episodes isn't enough to tell the arc, as it feels like there's a lot of things missing from that. It is to the point where I genuinely think if you are a Shield Hero fan and you made it just as far as Season 4 like I have, you might have to go back and read the manga or the light novel for this, because I'm not 100% sure if everything was put into the anime. It feels like there are tidbits and little things that seem to be really important that is actually cut out. Now, I can't confirm that because I didn't read any for these videos, and I can fully admit that. But that's the feeling that I get when I watch Season 4. And because of that short episode structure, the pacing is off, all the character development just seems completely lackluster, and the actual story beats are just completely out of whack. Both Outlaw and Full stories that take place in Siltfelt and Raphtalia's story that takes place in Cutenlo just seem like everything's been gutted for them for the most bare-bones skeleton story. Enough to get you to the point of what it's trying to do, but missing all the lore and world building that Shield Hero was really good at. Also, my apologies for anybody that is mad. Yes, I know I've been saying that Cutenlo is mostly just Raphtalia's story, but I also know that Sedina has a very, very big part in that as well. And yes, we do get a little bit of Sedina's story along with some flashbacks for her sister about their treatment. The problem is, it's so little and not really much to latch on that it feels weird calling it Raphtalia and Sedina's story, when Raphtalia is a big reason why they were going to Cutenlo in the first place. Though I can understand that if you want to go ahead and call it Raphtalia and Sedina's story, I get it. That is also a similar thing that happens in Siltfelt, where they talk about the previous Shield Hero and now he created Siltfelt in order to protect all the Beastkin, and questioning, well, the Shield Hero wants to leave so badly, but he's supposed to be protecting all of the people of Siltfelt. Don't you want to go ahead and praise those people? And they use it as the staying reason for Naofumi being in Siltfelt, but it's also never touched upon that history and why is that important, nor the actual political dynamics of the things. There is a lot of issues I have with the actual world building, as it's basically non-existent, only teasing you a little bit and never coming back to it again, which is even more frustrating than just not telling me at all. After 3 seasons of quite literally drowning the audience in so much lore to get us so hooked in the actual world and its functions and its secrets, why not go ahead and just do it here, where Siltfelt and Cutenlo probably have the most lore out of anything we've seen, and so many secrets yet they're only touched upon a very, very little bit, and we'll probably never go back to that again. Other than fighting off the waves and the Phoenix, there's not really a big reason to go ahead and explore Siltfelt, and there's not really a big reason to go back and explore Cutenlo. Or at the very least, just go ahead and actually explore the reasons why things happened in those regions. On top of all that, the animation for this season was fairly inconsistent. There was times where it was Full versus the main leader for the Lions that felt very stiff and not well animated. Not super abysmal, but not like it was put any effort into. But back in Cutenlo, when all the crew were going against one of the Sakura beasts, that actually looked pretty well animated. But also fights like Sedina and her little sister were okay at best. There was nothing that was super high quality of anything, but nothing that was super egregious. And it kind of took me out of it anytime I saw anything, because I went in with one expectation only to get baffled by another. Again, it goes back kind of to what I said of the plot. There's nothing that I would say is outright bad or anything, but you can notice the drop off of quality from the previous seasons to now. But the biggest thing for me personally is, other than one or two couple of mentions, the isekai element feels like it's completely gone. And it's something that's been a trope in isekai, where maybe for the first season and for the first couple of episodes in some cases, you'll actually mention the fact that it's an isekai and they actually are from another world. But eventually it gets waned off, and by the time you're in season 2, it's just another typical fantasy. The one thing I liked about Shield Hero, and the one thing that I think made it stand out through all other isekai across its first 3 seasons, was the fact that it still kept its strong isekai element. Sure, we didn't mention the fact that Naofumi came from the other world, but the second season introduced other cardinal heroes, and the third season introduced other people from other worlds. We still kept a little bit of that isekai element spinning, as you should for something like that. But season 4 almost has nothing. If you were to go ahead and start at season 4, which I don't know why you would do that in the first place, but if you were to, in this hypothetical sense, I wouldn't be surprised if people would just look at Shield Hero as just another fantasy, because season 4 doesn't really do a lot to really make itself an isekai. And I don't even think I would be that mad about it, as I've watched so many different isekai at the point that they just drop it halfway through the first season that I'm just perfectly fine with it, okay? I'm just desensitized with isekai dropping its premise and just becoming another fantasy, as they've already hooked me in and I'm just here for the ride now. But Shield Hero was consistent with it. Shield Hero was actually trying to do it, and that's why it just hurts even more, because the people behind it actually seemed like they tried to keep that isekai element alive. And so by season 4, when you're expecting more of it and none of it's there, it's disappointing. In fact, I'd go as far to say it's probably the biggest disappointment out of all of this. Now, I wasn't particularly burdened by it, but I know a lot of people mentioned it, so I think it's at least worth mentioning that Naofumi definitely feels like he's not struggling as much as he was previously. Sure, season 1 and season 3 still had some form of struggle, whether it was dealing with actual allegations or going ahead and dealing with the mess that all the cardinal heroes made, or quite literally dealing with a tortoise. Naofumi felt more capable here. It didn't really feel like he was actually struggling, rather than just having to deal with little annoyances. And while it didn't really bother me, I can see some people just not connecting more with Naofumi in season 4 due to that reason, as everyone likes a good underdog, but when the underdog becomes big and the underdog actually becomes somebody capable of doing things, he loses his, well, charm. He's no longer the hero that once struggled that we all cheer for. He's just now that hero, that 298,652 fantasy isekai hero. Now, despite everything I said in the last whatever minutes of going on and talking about all the problems that Shield Hero had, honest to God, I don't think I would still call this a bad season. Sure, they had a lot of downgrades, and you can definitely tell the significant drop off of quality, but at the end of the day, it didn't go into the bad territory for me. It definitely went into the generic part, but it didn't go into the bad. And also, this was definitely a setup season to give everybody who was of importance some form of boost to actually make them a bit stronger in order for the upcoming Phoenix that I am assuming is coming within season 5. And notoriously enough, setup arcs of this kind usually don't do well because, well, they're setting up. I just wish we didn't have to take such a decline in quality in order to set those things up, which is also why I think they potentially crammed 2 of these arcs together instead of making them 2 separate seasons. That way they can just get to the actual good bits. With that being said though, if there actually is a lot of information or any type of tidbit that is cut from either the light novel or the manga, I would be very interested as to see what that information is and if that would change the actual enjoyment when it comes to Shield Hero Season 4. But I am mostly making this video to kind of go ahead and say that Shield Hero is at a very interesting point. Now, Season 4 does in fact have the biggest drop off of quality when you go from one season to another, but that doesn't mean that the other seasons don't have their own drop off as well. And it's something that I've been noticing when I've been watching Shield Hero. I love season 1 and season 3, and I did at least notice that quality drop, but it was something that I didn't think I had to worry about. Season 4 makes me now worry about that. Anime could have bad seasons of anime. It happens all the time. But that doesn't mean that Shield Hero can't bounce back from this if it comes out with a good season 5. But it kind of needs to have that good season 5. And my biggest fear for Shield Hero is the fact that it feels like we are very quickly getting rid of all the isekai elements and it's just becoming a basic fantasy. Now, like I said before, when it comes to the actual isekai element being removed, this doesn't actually bother me in other isekai, as it's just part for the course and the isekai was just a tool to get people interested. But in Shield Hero, they've actually integrated it fairly well into its story, to the point where if you were to remove the isekai element, it would fundamentally change the entire story of Shield Hero. Now, obviously, it's not going to remove the content, but if it doesn't either A, bring it back in a strong degree to the point where it makes things interesting again, or B, bring it in a way that at least makes it somewhat intriguing for people, Shield Hero really needs to bring back that isekai element that it had because it was so strong. And if we go another season without it, where it just feels like another fantasy, it's gonna significantly drop more, I feel. Especially since it was a big identity for what Shield Hero really is. So I am praying with every fiber in my being and everything that I have within my body that Shield Hero Season 5 brings back those elements, brings back the good world building, brings back the good character development, and brings back good paced stories so we can go ahead and have another banger season. So here's hoping that Season 5 can go ahead and bring all the quality that it once had back from the previous seasons, because if it doesn't, I fear that the entertainment for Shield Hero might be waning very thin, and I don't think we can really go ahead and accept another season like that. Personally, for me, does in fact have a lot of grace, but it does not have that much grace.
I'm like so gay.